Listen. Let me tell you something about humans that nobody bothered to mention in the Galactic Council briefings. They are absolute lunatics. Complete, utter, certifiably insane. And I should know, because I spent 3 cycles as intelligence officer aboard the dreadnought Valor's Might. And in that time, I watched one human female dismantle everything we thought we understood about tactical warfare. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Maya Reeves, and she should have been dead approximately 417 times by my count. But I am getting ahead of myself. My name is Vorath, and I am a Krellian. We are known across 17 star systems as the premier military strategists in the galaxy. Our battle academies are legendary. Our commanders are studied in every war college, from the Andromeda Reach to the Outer Spiral. We do not lose battles. We calculate, we plan, we execute with precision that borders on artistic. And then the humans showed up and ruined everything. The time I met Reeves was in the strategy room aboard the flagship. She walked in wearing that ridiculous human military uniform. All crisp lines and unnecessary decorations, her dark hair pulled back in what they call a bun. She was small, laughably small by Krellian standards. I stand at 9 feet tall with 4 arms and a skeletal structure that could crush tungsten. She barely reached 6 feet and looked like a strong wind might snap her in half. Commander Xylex, my direct superior and a tactical genius with 200 confirmed campaigns under his belt, gestured to the holographic display floating above the conference table. "Lieutenant Commander Reeves," he said in that deep, resonant voice that made subordinates tremble, "welcome aboard. We are facing a significant tactical challenge in the Meridian sector. The Vex Collective has established a blockade around the mining colonies on Theta 7. Standard protocol would suggest a 3-pronged assault, utilizing our heavy cruisers to draw fire while—" "Yeah, that will not work," Reeves interrupted. The room went silent. Dead silent. "You do not interrupt Commander Xylex. Ever. I have seen officers demoted for far less." Xylex's 4 eyes narrowed, his facial ridges darkening to a dangerous shade of purple. "Excuse me?" Reeves tapped something on her datapad, and the holographic display shifted. "See these debris fields here, here, and here? The Vex are not stupid. They have set up gravitational mines throughout the approach vectors. Your heavy cruisers would be torn apart before they got within firing range. Plus, they have got sensor arrays monitoring every conventional approach route. They will see you coming from 3 light-years away." "Then what?" Xylex said slowly, his voice dropping to that lethal calm that preceded explosions. "Do you suggest?" Reeves smiled. Actually smiled. Like this was amusing. "We do something they will never expect," she said. "We go through the planet." I laughed. I could not help. "It?" It just burst out of me in a series of clicking chirps that are how Krellians express genuine mirth. "Through the planet?" "Lieutenant Commander, Theta 7, has a molten core that reaches temperatures exceeding 4,000 degrees. The gravitational stresses alone would crush a normal ship." "Yeah," Reeves said, still smiling. "Good thing we are not taking normal ships. The human stealth corvettes can handle it. We have got thermal shielding rated for solar corona insertion. We drop into the planet's upper atmosphere on the dark side, dive through the cloud layer into the terminator zone where the sensor interference is highest, skim along the surface at about Mach 12, pop up on the other side right in the middle of their formation, and light them up before they know what hit them." The silence this time was different. It was the silence of seasoned military officers trying to process whether they had just heard the most brilliant strategy ever conceived, or the ravings of someone who had consumed toxic substances. "That is insane," Xylex said finally. "Yeah," Reeves agreed cheerfully. "Probably. Want to try it anyway? And here is the thing that made my scales itch with a combination of horror and something I did not want to identify as excitement. We did try it, because Xylex, for all his tactical brilliance, had been fighting the Vex Collective for 6 cycles and losing ground every single engagement. And sometimes, when you are losing by following all the rules, you start listening to the crazy person who wants to fly through a planet's superheated core. 3 days later, I was strapped into an acceleration couch aboard the HSS Reckless, which I had learned was a perfectly appropriate name for a human vessel, watching the atmospheric entry flames lick across the viewport as we plummeted toward Theta 7 at speeds that made my internal organs question their life choices. "Altitude dropping, 15,000 meters, and falling fast," shouted the pilot. A human male named something like Marcus or Martin or... Honestly, I was too busy trying not to vomit to remember. Temperature readings at 3,000 degrees and climbing. Shields holding at 93%. Reeves stood behind the pilot's chair, one hand braced against the bulkhead, watching the sensor displays with the calm focus of someone waiting for tea to steep. Not someone hurtling toward a planetary surface in a metal tube while being cooked alive. "Throttle back to 80%, she said conversationally. "We want to stay in the thermal layer. If we drop too low, the pressure will start playing hell with the maneuvering thrusters." "Copy that. Reducing velocity. Still at 3,200 degrees. I made a sound that probably translated as a whimper. Reeves glanced back at me and grinned. Actually grinned. "First time doing atmospheric insertion through a molten planet?" "First time," I managed through gritted teeth. "Last time?" "Only time! Never again time!" She laughed. That human sound that indicates amusement, but also might indicate insanity. It is hard to tell with their species. "Oh, Vorath, buddy. You are going to love the next part. Marcus, prepare for surface skim maneuver. Surface skim ready. Angle of attack at 12 degrees. Somebody want to tell me again how this is not a suicide mission?" "Because we are very good at our jobs," Reeves said calmly. "And because the Vex are about to have a really, really bad day. On my mark, punch it. 3, 2, 1, mark!" The Reckless leveled out with a force that would have snapped my spine, if not for the inertial dampeners, and suddenly we were screaming across the surface of Theta 7, at speeds that turned the landscape into a blur. Mountains became smears, canyons became lines, and the whole time, the hull temperature kept climbing. 4,000 degrees. 4,500. "Shields at 78%, Marcus called out. "That is still inside. Acceptable parameters, right? Please tell me that is acceptable." "Perfectly acceptable." Reeves was checking her tactical display now, tracking the positions of the other 3 corvettes in our strike group. "How are we looking on emergence point?" 40 seconds to target zone, coming up on the Terminator line. I forced myself to look at the tactical display, trying to focus my mind on something other than the fact that we were currently inside a planet that should have killed us dozens of times over. The Vex blockade formation hovered in high orbit on the far side of Theta 7. 17 warships, arranged in a defensive sphere that covered every conventional approach vector. Beautiful, professional, completely unprepared for what was about to hit them. "All corvettes report ready," said the communications officer. "Weapons hot, targeting solutions locked." Reeves nodded once. "Then let us say hello. Marcus, take us up." Full burn. The Reckless angled sharply upward, breaking through Theta 7's upper atmosphere like a breaching whale. And suddenly, we were in vacuum. And there was the Vex blockade, close enough to see the running lights on their hulls, so close that their sensors probably were not even registering us yet, because we had appeared out of nowhere like something from a nightmare. "Fire," Reeves said quietly. And we opened up with everything. Railgun rounds punched through the shields of the nearest Vex cruiser before they even knew we were there. Missile pods launched their payloads in a coordinated barrage that turned 2 destroyers into expanding clouds of debris. Energy weapons carved through armor plating like it was tissue paper, and all of it happening in the span of about 8 seconds. The Vex tried to respond. Credit where it is due. They tried. But they were positioned to defend against external threats, not enemies that materialized in the middle of their formation from inside a planet. Their firing solutions were calibrated wrong. Their point defense systems were angled outward, and by the time they started to adapt, the other 3 corvettes had emerged, and added their firepower to the chaos. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Surgical, brutal, and over in less than 3 minutes. Hostile contacts, neutralized, Marcus reported, and I could hear the grin in his voice. Colony blockade is broken. All corvettes reporting minor damage only. Holy hell, we actually pulled that off. Reeves patted him on the shoulder. Never doubted it for a second. Send word to Commander Xylex that the Meridian sector is clear for supply runs, and somebody get me a damage report. I want to know if we scorched anything important off the hull. I unbuckled from my acceleration couch on legs that felt like they had been replaced with jelly, and stared at this small human female who had just destroyed 17 warships using a tactic that should have killed us all. You knew, I said. My voice came out as a croak. You knew that would work. You did not guess. You calculated it. The thermal stresses, the sensor blind spots, the positioning. You knew. Reeves shrugged. 73% probability of success based on the variables I could measure. The other 27% was just hoping the universe felt like playing nice. She tilted her head, studying me. Why? What probability would Krellian tactical doctrine have assigned that plan? I did not want to answer, but she kept looking at me with those sharp human eyes until I sighed and told the truth. 0%, I admitted. Attempting that maneuver would result in an automatic court-martial for any Krellian officer. It violates 17 separate fleet regulations regarding acceptable risk parameters. Yeah, well, Reeves said, heading toward the exit. Lucky for you guys, we humans wrote our own regulations. Come on, Vorath. Commander Xylex is going to want a full debrief, and I want to see his face when we tell him we did not lose a single ship. She was right about the face thing. Xylex's expression, when we reported our casualty count of 0 dead, 0 wounded, and only minor hull damage on 2 corvettes, was absolutely worth documenting. I wish I had recording equipment, but that was just the first engagement. The first time I watched Maya Reeves do something that should have been impossible. Over the following cycles, I learned that impossible was basically her default operating state. There was the time she convinced a Thexian pirate fleet to turn against their own employers by hacking their communications array and making them think their bosses had ordered them all executed, just to see what would happen. It worked. There was the incident with the asteroid field and the magnetic pulse that somehow turned a natural debris hazard into a weapon system that took out an entire squadron of enemy fighters. Do not ask me to explain the physics. I am a trained military intelligence officer, and even I could not follow her math. And then there was the Garvax situation, which is really what this story is about. Because the Garvax situation was when things went from impressive to absolutely deranged. The Garvax hegemony controlled a strategic system along the primary trade routes between the core worlds and the outer colonies. They were neutral, officially, but everyone knew they were selling intelligence to both sides of the conflict. The Galactic Council wanted them dealt with, but carefully, diplomatically, without triggering a wider war that might pull in their allies. So naturally, they sent Reeves. I was assigned as her liaison officer, which I had learned meant I was supposed to keep her from accidentally starting galactic incidents. It was an impossible job, but someone had to do it. We arrived at Garvax Prime in a small diplomatic courier. Just Reeves, myself, 2 human marines who looked like they had been carved from granite, and a very nervous translator named Pela, who kept asking if we were actually going to follow diplomatic protocol this time. Of course we are, Reeves said innocently. I always follow protocol, when it makes sense. That qualifier concerns me, I muttered. It should, she agreed cheerfully. The Garvax hegemony leader was a creature named Overlord Krath, and he was exactly what you would expect from someone who calls themselves an overlord. Huge, covered in natural armor plating, with a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. He received us in his throne room, which was designed specifically to make visitors feel small and insignificant. High vaulted ceilings, dim lighting, guards everywhere. Reeves walked in like she owned the place. Overlord Krath, she said, not bothering with any of the formal greetings. We need to talk about your little information-selling operation. Krath's eyes narrowed. The hegemony is neutral in your conflicts. We merely provide services to those who can afford them. Right. Services. Like the fleet. Movements you sold to the Vex last week that got 200 colonists killed. Those services. Prove it. Reeves smiled. And I felt my stomach drop because I knew that smile. That was the smile that preceded disaster. She pulled out a data chip and tossed it onto the floor in front of Krath's throne. Encrypted transmission logs, payment records, and a very interesting conversation between your intelligence chief and a Vex admiral discussing the exact timing of their raid. Also, I took the liberty of broadcasting all of it to every major news network in this sector about 15 minutes ago. The throne room went dead silent. Krath rose slowly, his armor plates rattling. You dare. Yeah, I do dare, Reeves said. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to stop selling intelligence. You are going to start sharing information freely with the Council. And you are going to do it with a smile on your face, or whatever passes for a smile with you guys. Or stealth ships in orbit right now, with targeting solutions locked on every single one of your communication satellites and power generation facilities. Push me, and your entire infrastructure goes dark. Then we will see how neutral everyone thinks you are when you cannot even keep the lights on. I had stopped breathing. Pela looked like she might pass out. The human Marines were grinning. Krath stared at Reeves for a long moment. Then he threw back his head and laughed, a sound like avalanches. You are insane! Yeah, probably, Reeves agreed. Do we have a deal? Krath kept laughing. And then he made a gesture, and suddenly we were surrounded by guards. At least 40 of them, all armed with weapons that could have punched through starship armor. The human Marines moved, hands dropping toward their sidearms, but Reeves held up one hand. Hold on, she said calmly. To Krath, this seems like a mistake. The only mistake was yours, human. Coming here. Threatening me. Did you really think I would let you leave alive? Krath settled back onto his throne. Your stealth ships will fire when you do not report in. Very clever. But I will survive 3 minutes without satellites. You, however, will not survive the next 3 seconds. Well, Reeves said thoughtfully, hold my beer. And then several things happened very quickly. First, Reeves was not holding a beer, obviously, but the phrase seemed to trigger something in the human Marines because they both moved with a speed I had not known their species possessed. Second, the lights went out. All of them. Complete darkness. Third, there was a sound like thunder, and the throne room shook. Fourth, when emergency lighting kicked in approximately 2.7 seconds later, half of Krath's guards were unconscious, the other half were staring at weapons that had somehow been disabled, and Reeves was standing on Krath's throne with a plasma blade pressed against his throat. Surprise? She said pleasantly. I lied. About the stealth ships. They are not in orbit. They are buried in your throne room walls. We spent 3 days installing them before we even arrived. And that explosion? That was your main reactor going offline. You have got about 10 minutes before life support fails in this wing of the palace. Krath's eyes widened. Impossible. Yeah, you guys really need to update your security scans. They are terrible. Now, let me ask again. Do we have a deal? And that, my friends, is when I learned something important about humans. When they say hold my beer, what they really mean is watch me do something so catastrophically stupid that it circles back around to being brilliant. Krath agreed to terms. We left Garvax Prime with a treaty that gave the Galactic Council everything they wanted. And I spent the entire trip back trying to figure out when exactly Reeves had planted demolition charges in an overlord's throne room without anyone noticing. I finally asked her during the flight back. She grinned. You remember those 2 days I spent sightseeing while you handled the preliminary negotiations? Yes? I was not sightseeing. Well, technically I was. I was seeing sites to plant explosives. Pela helped. She is really good at dimensional scanning. I turned to look at the translator, who had the decency to look embarrassed. It seemed important, Pela said quietly. It was important, Reeves agreed. Also fun. Mostly fun, actually. Vorath, you should have seen your face when the lights went out. Absolutely priceless. I made a sound that was probably something between a laugh and a breakdown. You are going to get us all killed. Maybe, Reeves said, leaning back in her seat and closing her eyes. But not today. Today we made the galaxy a little bit safer. Tomorrow we will worry about tomorrow. And that was when I realized something terrifying. I was starting to think like a human, starting to see the galaxy the way they did, full of impossible problems that just needed the right application of calculated insanity to solve. It should have worried me more than it did, but mostly I was already wondering what Reeves was going to do next. The problem with working alongside humans, I discovered, is that they are contagious. Their particular brand of chaos starts to seem normal after a while. You find yourself thinking thoughts like, well, yes, flying through a star's corona does seem like a reasonable tactical option. Or, sure, why not challenge a warlord to single combat using weapons we invented 5 minutes ago? This is how civilizations fall, probably. 2 months after the Garvax incident, I was sitting in the officers' mess aboard the Valor's Might, trying to enjoy a meal of protein paste, which is exactly as appetizing as it sounds, when Reeves dropped into the seat across from me with a datapad and an expression I had learned to fear. Vorath, my favorite Krellian, how do you feel about suicide missions? I put down my spork. Negatively. Very negatively. I feel negative emotions about suicide missions. Great, because I have got one that is only maybe 70% fatal, which is basically a vacation by our standards. She slid the datapad across the table. Remember Admiral Vexthor? I felt my scales go cold. Everyone in the fleet knew about Vexthor. He was the Vex Collective's supreme commander, a tactical genius who had never lost a battle in 40 cycles of warfare. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was a mobile fortress the size of a small moon, armed with enough firepower to crack planets. And he was currently leading a fleet of 300 warships toward the colony worlds in the peripheral systems. Yes, I said carefully. I remember the unstoppable military commander who has killed millions and whose fleet outnumbers ours 5-1. Why? Because we are going to take him out. Personally. Reeves tapped the datapad. Intelligence reports he is meeting with his sub-commanders in the Halcyon Nebula in 72 hours. All the top brass in one place. It is too good an opportunity to pass up. It is too good because it is obviously a trap. Oh, definitely a trap. Reeves agreed. But here is the thing about traps. They only work if you do what the trapper expects. And Vexthor expects us to either stay far away or come at him with overwhelming force. He does not expect 4 idiots in a stolen cargo hauler to fly right up to his flagship and say, hello. I stared at her. 4 idiots? You, me, Marcus, and this new guy, Tommy Chen. She paused. Wait, sorry, I know you said not to use certain names. Tommy Erickson. Yeah, he is good with explosives. You will like him, probably, maybe. I will not like him, because I will be dead, because we will all be dead, because this plan is insane. 70% fatal, I said. That leaves 30% chance of success. Those are great odds. Those are terrible odds. Not by human standards. She stood up, grabbing the datapad. Briefing. In 2 hours. Wear something comfortable. We are going to be in that cargo hauler for a while, and it smells like something died in the ventilation system. Something probably did die in the ventilation system if humans have been using it, but she was already gone, and I was already knowing, with the resigned certainty that had become familiar, that I was going to go along with this because somehow her insanity had become my normal. The briefing was exactly as terrible as I feared. Marcus was there, grinning like a maniac. Tommy Erickson turned out to be a lanky human, with nervous energy and an unhealthy enthusiasm for things that explode. And Commander Xylex attended remotely, his holographic form flickering with what I had learned to recognize as resigned acceptance. Let me understand this correctly, Xylex said slowly. You intend to infiltrate the most heavily defended flagship in the Vex Collective, assassinate their supreme commander during a meeting with his entire command, structure, and escape, using a cargo hauler. A stolen cargo hauler, Reeves corrected. It has authentic Vex transponder codes. We liberated it from a supply depot 3 weeks ago specifically for this. And your extraction plan? Still working on that part. But we have got 72 hours. Plenty of time. Xylex's hologram flickered in a way that suggested he was experiencing emotions beyond his usual tactical calm. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, in my 200 campaigns, I have never approved a mission with this many variables and unknowns. Then this will be an exciting first for you. Sir. There was a long silence. Then Xylex sighed, a sound like escaping gas. If you die, I am putting it in your personnel file that you died doing something spectacularly stupid. Fair enough. If I live, I want a medal. If you live, I will personally forge you a medal from the wreckage of Vex Thor's flagship. Dismissed. 72 hours later, I was crammed into the cargo hold of the ship that did indeed smell like something had died in the ventilation, wearing a Vex military uniform that did not fit my anatomy correctly, trying not to vomit from both nerves and the odor. How are we doing back there, Vorath? Reeves called from the cockpit, questioning every life choice that brought me to this moment. That is the spirit. Marcus, bring us into the approach vector. Nice and easy. We are just a regular supply ship, delivering regular supplies to a regular military conference. Through the small viewport, I could see the Halcyon Nebula spreading across space like a wound, all purple gases and electromagnetic storms. And floating in the middle of it, surrounded by hundreds of smaller warships, was the Eternal Dominion. It was massive, impossibly massive. Weapons, platforms bristled from every surface. Shield generators glowed with barely contained energy. This was not a ship. This was a declaration of military superiority, made manifest in metal and violence. Yeah, that is definitely the right place, Marcus muttered. Because nothing says regular supply delivery like flying into a fleet that could glass our entire civilization before breakfast. Stay calm. We have got the right codes. As long as nobody looks too closely at our paperwork, we will be fine. And if they look closely, then Tommy brought enough explosives to make our deaths quick and memorable. You did bring enough explosives, right, Tommy? Tommy patted a suspicious-looking crate with entirely too much affection. Enough to blow a hole through triple-reinforced battle plating. Maybe enough to take out a small city block. Possibly enough to cause a minor localized apocalypse. Perfect. Vorath, you are up. Time to do your translator thing. I moved to the communications panel with legs that felt disconnected from my body and opened a channel to the Eternal Dominion traffic control. This is cargo transport Delta 79 requesting docking clearance. We are carrying medical, supplies and ration packs for the conference personnel. There was a pause that lasted approximately 17,000 years. Then a voice crackled back, speaking in the harsh clicking language of the Vex. Delta 79. Transmit your authorization codes and manifest. Marcus sent the forged documents, and we waited. I could hear my hearts beating. Both of them. In different rhythms. It was very distracting. Authorization accepted, the voice said finally. Proceed to docking bay 14. And Delta 79, your manifest shows you are 3 hours late. Explain. I glanced at Reeves, who made a gesture that probably meant improvise. Navigational error, I said. The nebula interference affected our guidance systems. It will not happen again. Another pause. Then, see that it does not. Any further delays, and your entire crew will be disciplined. Control out. The channel closed. Marcus let out a breath. Did we just successfully lie our way onto an enemy flagship? Apparently, Reeves said. Now comes the fun part. Everybody remember the plan? Sneak in, plant explosives, locate Vex Thor, eliminate him during the chaos, steal a escape pod, hope we do not die, Tommy recited. It is a terrible plan. It is a great plan. It just has several points where things could go catastrophically wrong. That is what makes it interesting. We docked in Bay 14 without incident, which somehow made me more nervous, not less. The Eternal Dominion was a functioning military vessel, which meant personnel everywhere. Guards, crew members, maintenance workers. Any one of them could look at us and realize we were very much not supposed to be there. Reeves handed out weapons. Small, concealable, definitely lethal. Remember, we are Vex transport workers. We belong here. Act like it. Vorath, you are the crew chief. Tommy and Marcus, you are haulers. I am your extremely bored supervisor who wishes she had taken that desk job instead. Yes, I said. Many questions, but I suspect you will ignore them all. You are learning. Let us move. The interior of the Eternal Dominion was exactly what you would expect from a warship designed by a species that valued function over aesthetics. Gray corridors, harsh lighting, everything built to withstand damage and continue operating. We moved through it, carrying crates of supplies that were mostly empty except for Tommy's explosives, and somehow nobody stopped us. This is too easy, I muttered. Way too easy, Marcus agreed. I do not trust it. Relax, Reeves said quietly. Paranoia is healthy, but so is confidence. We look like we belong here because we are carrying heavy crates and complaining. That is the most believable cover possible. Nobody questions the delivery workers. She was right. We passed 3 different security checkpoints, and not one guard did more than glance at our forged credentials. It was almost insulting how easy it was. We planted the first set of explosives in a redouble maintenance shaft near the primary reactor. Tommy worked with the quiet efficiency of someone who genuinely enjoyed his job, humming something that might have been a human song while wiring together enough destructive force to cripple a starship. How much time are you setting on these? Reeves asked. 2-hour delay on the primaries, 5-minute delay on the secondaries once we trigger the remote detonator. Should give us time to finish the job and get clear. Probably. Probably is good enough. Next position. We moved deeper into the ship, planting charges in critical systems, power distribution, life support control, shield generators, each one carefully hidden, each one precisely calibrated, and all the while, crew members walked past us, without a second glance. It was going perfectly, which meant something was about to go terribly wrong. We were approaching the command section when it happened. A Vex officer, tall and armored and radiating authority, stopped directly in front of us. His eyes scanned our group, and I saw the exact moment recognition failed to match what he expected to see. You there? He said, pointing at me. State your business in this section. Supply delivery, I managed. Medical equipment for the conference. Medical equipment is delivered to Deck 7. This is Deck 12. Explain. Reeves stepped forward smoothly. Our fault, sir. Got turned around in the corridors. This ship is huge. We will head back to the cargo lifts immediately and... Silence. The officer moved closer, studying Reeves with increasing suspicion. Your anatomy is wrong. You are not Vex. You are something else. You are... And then Reeves punched him in the throat with a speed that made his head snap back, followed it with a strike to the nerve cluster under his jaw, and he dropped like someone had cut his power supply. Well, she said calmly, there goes the stealth approach. Tommy, how fast can you set off those charges? Give me the detonator and I can blow them right now. Do it! Marcus, Vorath, we are going loud. Find Vex Thor, and finish this before every guard on this ship converges on our position. Alarms started screaming. Red emergency lighting flooded the corridors. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of boots, hundreds of them, rushing toward our location. Tommy pressed the detonator, and the Eternal Dominion shuddered as explosions ripped through its infrastructure. Lights flickered, gravity wavered. And in that moment of chaos, we ran. The conference room was 3 decks up, according to the intelligence reports. We fought our way through it, and when I say fought, I mean, Reeves and the humans moved like violence made flesh, while I provided covering fire and tried not to get killed. Vex soldiers appeared in doorways and fell with precision shots. Security barriers went up, and Marcus kicked them down with strength I had not known humans possessed. It was chaos. Pure, undirected chaos. And then we burst through the doors of the conference chamber. And there he was. Admiral Vex Thor, Supreme Commander of the Collective Fleet, surrounded by his top officers, all of them turning to stare at us in shock. "Surprise," Reeves said, raising her weapon. "Hope we are not interrupting anything important." Vex Thor laughed. Actually laughed, a sound like breaking rocks. "Humans. I should have known. Only your species would be insane enough to board my flagship. Yeah, we get that a lot. Any last words before I ruin your whole day? Just one question. How do you intend to escape? Even if you kill me here, you are trapped on a ship filled with thousands of my soldiers. You have doomed yourselves for nothing." Reeves smiled. "Who said anything about escaping? Tommy, you remember what I told you about shaped charges and directional blast patterns?" Tommy nodded enthusiastically. "Sure do, boss." "Good. Because I am pretty sure this entire section of hull is about to experience rapid, unscheduled disassembly. Vorath, Marcus, grab something stable. This is going to be bumpy." And then, 3 things happened simultaneously. Tommy triggered his remaining explosives, which he had apparently been placing strategically this entire time without me noticing. The outer hull of the conference chamber blew outward in a directed explosion that sent Vex Thor and half his officers tumbling into space. And Reeves shot a grappling line into the corridor ceiling and grabbed me with a grip that would have crushed smaller bones. We got pulled backward by the explosive decompression, tumbling through the breach in the hull, and suddenly we were in open space, surrounded by debris and dying Vex officers and the vast purple expanse of the Halcyon Nebula. "Now would be a great time for that extraction plan you mentioned," I screamed, though sound does not carry in vacuum, so it was more like aggressive thought projection. Reeves pointed, and I followed her gesture to see a small ship, absolutely tiny, compared to the warships around us, streaking toward our position. It had no markings, no identification. Just a cargo ramp dropping open, and a figure waving frantically from inside. We tumbled through empty space, using maneuvering thrusters on our suits, dodging debris from the Eternal Dominion, which was now listing badly and venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. The small ship matched our velocity with a precision that spoke of an extremely talented or extremely crazy pilot. Possibly both. We hit the cargo ramp hard enough to bruise important things, and the ship was already accelerating away before we even got the ramp closed. "Everyone alive?" Reeves called out, pulling off her helmet. "Define alive," Marcus gasped, "because I think several of my organs just relocated." "Vorath?" I was too busy trying to remember how breathing worked to respond verbally, so I just gave what I hoped was a thumbs up. Humans had taught me that gesture. It seemed appropriate. Tommy was laughing. Actually laughing. The kind of unhinged sound that suggested shock and adrenaline and possibly brain damage. Did we just blow up Admiral Vex Thor? Did that actually work? Got visual confirmation of his body floating in space, so yeah, I would say mission accomplished. Reeves moved to the cockpit and knocked on the partition. "Nice flying, Pela." The partition slid open to reveal our translator, who was somehow piloting this escape craft while looking absolutely terrified and simultaneously thrilled. "Did it work? Please tell me it worked, because I just committed approximately 47 acts of treason and violated 17 different flight regulations to be here. It worked perfectly. You are a hero." "Vorath, you okay back there?" I finally found my voice. I am reconsidering every choice in my entire life that led to this moment. Also, I think I am developing a bleeding ulcer. But yes, okay, alive, somehow. "Great! Because Commander Xylex is about to hail us, and I need you to do the talking." My diplomatic voice is taking a break. The communication panel lit up, and Xylex's face appeared, his expression cycling through shock, relief, and profound resignation in rapid succession. Tell me you did not just do what my sensors indicate you did. We eliminated Admiral Vex Thor and crippled his flagship, I reported, my voice only shaking slightly. Mission complete. Requesting immediate pickup before the remaining Vex fleet remembers we exist. You are insane. All of you. Completely. Utterly insane. Xylax paused. Also, you are heroes. The Vex fleet is in disarray. Their command structure has collapsed. We can push them back. Maybe even win this war. Another pause. Reeves, about that medal. I will take 2, actually, Reeves said cheerfully. 1 for me, 1 for Vorath. He earned it. I wanted to argue, but honestly, after boarding an enemy flagship, assassinating their supreme commander, and escaping through explosive decompression, I figured I had earned some recognition. 3 weeks later, I stood in the ceremony hall aboard the Valor's Might, while Commander Xylax personally pinned medals on myself, Reeves, Marcus, Tommy, and Pela. The entire crew was assembled. It should have been a solemn, dignified affair. Reeves leaned over and whispered, "Next mission? I am thinking we steal a Vex dreadnought. Just take the whole thing. Think we could pull it off?" And despite everything, despite all the near-death experiences and impossible situations and tactical insanity, I found myself thinking about it, actually considering the logistics. Perhaps, I said slowly, we would need detailed schematics and a distraction, something that would pull their entire defense fleet out of position. See, this is why I like you, Vorath. You are learning to think like a human. That is not a compliment. Sure it is, she grinned, and I realized, with a strange mix of horror and something that might have been pride, that she was right. I had learned to think like them, to see impossible problems and calculate the percentage chance that sheer audacity might solve them. The Krellian military academies would have expelled me for this kind of thinking, but we had just won a war that should have been unwinnable, using tactics that should have gotten us all killed, by doing things that no sane military force would ever attempt. So maybe, just maybe, insanity was the most logical response to an insane galaxy. After the ceremony, as we walked through the corridors of the Valor's Might, Reeves stopped and looked at me seriously. Hey, Vorath, real talk for a minute. I know I drag you into dangerous situations on a regular basis, and I know it goes against everything your species stands for, all that careful planning and calculated risk assessment. If you ever want to transfer to a different assignment, something safer, I would understand. I considered it. Genuinely considered it. A nice quiet intelligence post analyzing reports, from a safe distance. No more flying through planets, or boarding enemy flagships, or any of the 1,000 other ways humans found to dance with death. It sounded terrible. No, I said finally. I think I will stay. Someone needs to document these incidents for future military historians. They will never believe any of it without a credible witness. Reeves laughed and clapped me on the shoulder with enough force to make me stumble. You are a good friend, Vorath, even if you complain the entire time. Someone has to maintain standards. If I left, you would probably start planning missions with 90% fatality rates. Only 90? That is very optimistic of you. And as we walked away, already discussing the next impossible mission, I realized something important. Humans were crazy, absolutely certifiably insane. Their tactics violated every principle of sound military doctrine. They took risks that would make any rational species flee in terror. But they won. Against impossible odds, against superior forces, against enemies that should have crushed them, they found a way to win. And somewhere along the way, their particular brand of insanity had taught me something my people had forgotten. That sometimes the most logical response to overwhelming odds is not careful calculation, but spectacular audacity. That sometimes you cannot plan your way to victory. Sometimes you just have to say, hold my beer and charge straight into the chaos. Was it smart? Probably not. Was it survivable? Debatable. But it was never, ever boring. And in a galaxy full of careful, calculating, logical species who were slowly losing a war they should have won, maybe boring was the real enemy. So yes, I stayed with the humans. I documented their madness. I participated in their schemes. And when future historians read my reports about Lieutenant Commander Maya Reeves and her completely unhinged approach to military strategy, they will probably think I am lying or exaggerating. But every word will be true. Every impossible mission, every insane tactic, every moment when humans looked at certain death and said, "Sure, why not? Let us try it anyway." Because that is what they do. That is what makes them terrifying and inspiring and utterly unique in the galaxy. They take the impossible, calculate the odds, shrug, and do it anyway. And somehow, improbably, impossibly, they make it work. "Hold my beer," they say. And then they change everything.